Hello there friends, Steve here. I always have a process of making videos. A process of no process, I guess. I've got a lot of ideas, like when I'm elsewhere. I think, oh yeah, I'd really like to address that topic, or I might be watching something on television or on a video and think, I need to address that, I really need to address that. And then after a while, think what is important to me, what is important to you, the people who have found me or my channel. What is really important, because obviously we live in this world, it's like a crazy pantomime, isn't it? The politics, And you have to kind of go along with it, just like Christmas, boo and hooray, this politician, and vote him, vote her. And it has an effect, of course it has an effect, just like, a fantasy film will have an effect on everyone's mood. If it's a crap film, everybody will be, unhappy, and if it's a really good film, everybody will get along fine, So the fiction has an effect on our reality, on our mood. Obviously a lot of us have woken up to, the mainstream propaganda. We've woken up to the idea that the news is just telling us what is best for us to hear for their advantage, whoever they may be. So we get this idea that we live in a kind of an everyday pantomime film script movie that's been pre-scripted, and we've got the good characters and the bad characters, the heroes and the villains. I always wondered, why would anybody ever play a villain? Why would anybody even portray a villain in a movie? Why would you want an actor character that plays the bad guy, that takes on all of the evil role? Why? Because surely the actor, the protagonist, the actor who walks out on stage himself is a professional. He's not evil, or not necessarily, at least that's not the intent. You would think that these people actors are good people, and it's the role that they portray. They take on the scapegoat role of being the baddie, the villain in the film. The film would be nothing without the baddie. And of course, we all want to be famous and live in high esteem and hooray, but really, that's also an illusion. It's like pro wrestling, both parties go out to fight, good against evil, boo, hooray, and at the end of the day, backstage they're shaking hands, and a lot of it's about entertainment, amusement. Pro wrestling is a difficult sport. Throwing, the size of these men throwing each other about, you can really get damaged. But it's not fighting, it's more choreography. I guess there's an element of fighting to it and stuff, but it's like politics, it's like everything. There's an element of show. Just like there is with Christmas, just like there is with life, you have to sometimes when you're depressed, you even think to yourself, what is the purpose of life? Why get happy about these little stupid things? And you really feel justified in the fact that life is worth nothing, prove it to me. But then it's up to yourself, isn't it? You're doing it to yourself. So happiness is only found within the self, really. It's found on the outside, on the in. It's a relationship, isn't it? Things, it's not what a thing is, it's a relationship you have to it. And I think over time we've put a lot of effort into the material world. We've, through the way money works and the way society works, we've earned money and bought things. We don't buy things off people who make things usually nowadays. So we don't really appreciate how the thing's been made or who made it. But we get our thing. Maybe it's like a tool or a toy, and we worked time for that. Maybe doing a menial job that's very easy, in order to get something that's very complicated to build. So money makes it possible for us to make our ideas happen instantly, by going down to the shops and getting what you want. It means that we've kind of put our entire spirit into the material world. The things that we buy, we put our spirit into them, and we become more and more kind of standardized. I notice it with myself. And as we live in a world, we live together. You're watching me, I'm watching you. So what can I share with you? I can share myself, but it has to be a part of myself that's useful for you. I would say. And obviously you're the one to find the use in what somebody else says. I think the thing that concerns me is that people are different. People in general, there's different types of people. We talk about men and women being different, but I think I've got far more in common with many women than I have with most other men, on that level. So it's not about female, male, man, woman in that sense. It's about types of person. If I'm lifting a heavy object with somebody, I want an equal partner for power. If I want somebody else to fulfil another half of a job or a role or a task or something, or another part of an essence, you want power and glory, So you, like I, we dwell in this world, we live in this world, we try and make sense of this crazy society, we go along with it as best we can, we use its money, we laugh at its jokes, we drink its water and eat its food as best we can. And I think because we live in a material world, it's become less and less the fact that people have become less and less inventive, imaginative, We kind of buy our ideas from the outside. We look for things, we look for ideas elsewhere. And now there's a reason for that. There's a reason for actually listening to somebody else and seeing sense in what they're saying. It's called recognition. Cognition is like the logical ability of the mind to run that logic again, and it makes sense in another mind. So recognition, I recognize your idea, because it works in my mind too. But it's not about the fact that you would just instantly see somebody else's idea and take it as read, and I haven't thought about it myself. It's recognition. It has to be in both minds. It has to be a meeting of minds for it to make sense, And you'll know yourself, you've had some great ideas and you haven't found anybody who can even understand those ideas. And maybe one day you found somebody who actually understood and had a very similar idea. And that actually almost justifies or validates the fact that it's true, Like, let's say if there was something in the sky, an alien spaceship thing with 15 rainbow lights on it, and a light you'd never seen, a colour you'd never seen before. But you was the only one who'd seen it, and you knew it, you couldn't remember. And then years later, you met somebody else who described exactly the same thing, You'd know it to be true, or there'd be a truth to what you saw. Now, whether you could actually prove that there was anything material to what you saw is another thing. And why would you need to prove it? This is the other thing. Why would we need to prove there's alien life if it comes knocking at my door and brings me something to eat and drink and smoke and test out the languages and have a bit of interaction? Then it doesn't mean a great deal to me personally. So it's about personal interaction. We live in a world, television, it presents us with big ideas well out of our reach, wars that we've never even seen. We can't even prove them countries even exist in our own personal perception of the things. We get presented with a future, and we all seem to know what that future is to a little degree, and actually the future doesn't exist. And this is the whole crux thing that I notice that people struggle with. So yeah, listen carefully. It's like you're either absent or present. You're either here now, sensing the world, with your mind on the world, or you're absent, thinking, worrying, pondering, contemplating, but it's not about now. And you'll notice that kind of, I don't know, I notice it with me, I can talk for myself. I feel a big switch in myself when I come back to full attention. When you're sat in a room and you're not quite listening to somebody and then they say something and your attention's fully with them. We're good at that, humans, separating our attention out a little bit. You notice it maybe when you're driving and you're falling a little bit asleep, and maybe an animal runs out onto the road and it fully wakes you up, you know. It's like you're giving it all your attention now. And we don't notice our attention fading into sleep. And I think that really one of the main controls you have on your own self, on your own nervous system, on your connection between your body and your mind and your consciousness, is that switch, to switch between an inner dialogue with yourself about the world or an outer experience. Now usually it flashes backwards and forwards quickly. So in a way, you're sat in a room now, somewhere in some room, and there's people doing things maybe in that room, or there's other things happening. But here's this video, here's me speaking. It's a medium. You could pause it and give your time to somebody else. But at the same time, it has value. We see that it has value to share human ideas over the medium because it passes over a long distance. So it's knowing when to adopt your time to eternity and when to adopt your time to now. You know, eternity is like all of the things that are written, all of the things that can wait for man. When now it's like the things that are really happening in the room. So as you're listening to me and this information and thinking about it for yourself and pondering ideas, it's an inner dialogue, it's in your imagination. In heaven, in your mind, in your thoughts. Now if we invent things in life, if we want to create a future, then it has to come from heaven to earth. It has to come from your mind to the matter. It has to come from your imagination into the world. Not the other way around, and we often make that mistake and we become frustrated. The main reason for frustration and suffering on this planet is because we're trying to seek the answers in the material realm. And it'll always fall short of the final answer. Often we question religions and what's the point for religions and who is God and where is heaven and these types of questions. And we've almost been forced or bred or raised to argue about those questions rather than take the argument away and just to think of it for yourself and make your own conclusion regardless of what the masses would say. It's not illegal to think. You know, so you can take on a thought, any kind of thought that's useful to you, and it's only on the application and the motive of that the action that would enter any sort of harm or sin or crime. You know, the sin starts in the mind for sure. But we can think things through. That the imagination is like heaven and hell. You know, one side is hell. It's like barren. It's filled with the crap that people tell you, the things you've seen and wish you didn't. You know, the things that you put to one side, you cannot erase them. They're there to learn from. They're there to create a balance. Sometimes I think the amount of pain or suffering that's hollowed out our soul is the amount of like joy that can fill up that hollowness. Maybe that's how life works. You know, erosion. So this, in our imaginations, we sometimes worry and suffer, and you know how it is. You're carrying the same burdens around with you all the time, but you suddenly, when you forget about it and you've got something that really energetically pushes that away, you know, family or jokes or kids or something that's going really well, you can really push that aside and forget that there's a hell going on. And suddenly everything is kind of not painted black. And I think in a way you can adopt a certain way of thinking where you know what's right and you put it to one side of your imagination, and on the other side of your imagination you keep just a memory, an analysis of the bullshit that you've been fed over life, the bullshit that you've told to others by accident, you know, the bullshit that we perpetuate amongst ourselves. You know, it has to be sorted out. We can't call it discrimination to sort out, you know, falsehoods from truths, at least for the self, you know. So it's about not letting other people mess with your evaluation system. Obviously, if you physically affect reality, you're going to get a physical effect back. So consequences are always there. But I find we fall short on dreaming, on having an imagination, on building what is right. We know we've got a health side of thing, all the bullshit, and we're fighting with it. And we've got a little bit of what's right. Or I think it'd be right to go and live in nature. I can't deny that. Or it'd be right that we all don't hurt each other. And these types of things, yeah, shoulds. Who's going to enforce that? We know that we have to educate ourselves and everybody else through all forms of means. Reverse education, a lot of horror movies and things, and a lot of movies depict the conflicts, not the solutions. Read, most holy scriptures or Bibles and things, they don't have the solutions in. They're not spiritual guidebooks in that way. They're educational, but on a massive, massive scale, And to write them off as just kind of like proofs of something. So religion is like what we live. We live in society as a religion. It's a belief system. A belief system is the definition of a religious institution, a religion. Although, as I've often said, the word religion means to re-liege, to connect back. And that would be to connect back with yourself, because we was disconnected at birth. We was disconnected with the births and death certificates and our entries. But only in a paper trick, We get sometimes very overwhelmed by proof on paper. Oh, 666, or this is written, that's written. Ah, how evil. Yeah, absolutely. Paper is absolutely evil. When I was little, I cut my finger with the edge of a piece of paper once. I was fascinated you could actually draw blood with paper. I was more looking at the blood thinking, wow, a knife in school. But other than that, paper doesn't create much harm. Money is paper, mostly numbers. It's not a weapon in that sense, It all dwells in the imagination, but because half of it's dominated hell and half of it's dominated heaven, if we just follow that Luciferian idea of what we're looking at, then we're buying into that idea. And now if we buy into another idea, we buy into that idea. But I'm not going to tell you the other one because it's yours. The system can't pose what's just right. I think I said it before, didn't I? There's no killing on down a dark alleyway, or it doesn't say on the front of a cinema, no idolatry. The law can't prescribe what is right and then tell us to live by it, because no man can define what is right. We can do it to a certain degree, but because we're all human beings and because humanity is always pushing in a journey like a big ship going through space, always something new. There's always development that changes the laws, changes our course. And it's a hard road, but we've made it this far with this what we call nonsense. So obviously the nonsense is making sure that those who believe in nonsense are at least educated with that nonsense. Now the rest of us, we need to stop getting so damn frustrated because other people won't listen. Maybe you're just a different type of person. Maybe you see the world with those special glasses, those special lenses that show you the mockery. I'm not going to call it the truth, because the truth is yours. The truth belongs to a much higher place. It belongs in your heart. You can't speak it out. If we could, then, we'd have it written. Everybody knows that, and the intelligent people, lawmakers at the highest degree, would know that life belongs to you as much as it belongs to anybody else. You are no less important than anybody else, The universe loves you just as much as anybody else. You are as important, You have just as much as an important role in this humanity as anybody else. And just because we don't see your influence or hear from your influence, it has absolutely no bearing on truth or reality. Fame and fortune. Who invented the wheel? He should have got a Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Wheel Prize. And it doesn't matter who gets a name for something. Taking a name for something is a massive burden. For me personally, I'd much rather work behind the scenes and get some other puppet to say what I've got to say. But unfortunately, I can't write it down. So in heaven, in your imagination, in that part of your brain where you've been building for years what you know is right, but you've still got building to do, I've got building to do, we've all got building to do. But that's the part that needs to come down from the imagination into this world, come down from heaven to earth. This is the idea of Jerusalem and stuff, but I won't go into that because, the words are like labels, deviant labels. Use a word and it suddenly casts a spell. When normally a word means the same thing in different languages, and we're just getting a little bit prejudiced because it's not the word we're used to. So this, you got something in your imagination. If it's good, you should be able to manifest it on earth. Now, if it's something that takes millions of people to manifest, then you're going to have to go for pretty kind of like deep down soul feeling. It's something deep down in your heart, a long reasoning that that everybody else got to feel like that. That it's not just you, it's my divine law is I want walnut ice cream. No, we're talking about massive things going on here. You need to be able to hold a dream inside of you that's as big as the universe. You need to be able to think and dream so big that it ends in delusions of grandeur. But at the moment we live in delusions of inferior. I say don't buy into the illusions, live your dream, but it's going to be a hard dream. It's not going to be like, the reason I call it dream is because it's a vision that you're going to have to build that's tangible, that's realistic, that everybody wants. And then, how does it come to earth? How do we make the impossible possible? It takes faith. The past happened, the past changes. Sometimes somebody will tell you something and I didn't realise that. All those years I thought that. Now it's changed my total viewpoint of life now about you. I thought that happens so often that the past changes. So if you imagine reverse engineering, the future's going to change. Anything that I've ever planned has never happened exactly the way it is. So it's much better to work off potentialities, to look at potentialities in your imagination. What can be possible? What is possible? And then start working there. If I put a little bit of dream juice into that, or if I just put a little bit of love or enthusiasm into that, maybe I can make the unbelievable believable. Maybe I can make the unreal real. Maybe I can make the future actually happen. Rather than having this idea that the future is based off the movement of materialistic things defined from the past. I don't know which world people live in. There are movers and shakers in this world. Authors, writers, artists, actors, builders, designers, architects, teachers, all people who live in the future. Maybe it's just a different type of consciousness. It is difficult to live there. It is lonely to look into the future too much. And there's an art to doing it because it's not just wishful thinking, I'd like to have this in the future. I'd like my life to be like that. It's not status based. It's based on a relationship. It's based on like a movie scene that you want to reach as an author. You're coming up to the end of the movie and you want the two actors that fall in love to finally cross that bridge and kiss, and for everybody to cheer. That's the plot, isn't it? That's what you're working at. And so say if you're like, we need a horse. I need a kingdom for a horse. I need to find my bride to be a kingdom for a horse. It's not like halfway down the line. It's like, well, what did you want? I wanted a horse. I can't remember why, but I want a horse. I'm going to ride round in circles because I want a horse. I like riding through the wild. It's really exciting because I want a horse. Wasn't there something about a bride? Wasn't there something for a kingdom for your horse? But now you've got a horse and you're just riding round because you like riding. You see, so it's about the plot, and if you lose the plot, you still might have half of the plan but be going in the wrong direction. This is why it's important to know what's going on in your mind, in your heaven, in that imagination. And it has to be in line with your emotions, because when you arrive for that big kiss moment, you're going to want it to be emotionally in line with you. It's going to have to make sense to your brain. It's going to have to make sense in all regards. Anything you want to plan. So in that sense, like I say, planning is a bit like impromptu, planar. A plan is like a map that you would, and if you don't go down that plan, you go down that plan, Whereas a plot is somewhere you're going to get to. Don't forget where you want to get to. Don't forget the plot. It's not contrived, we all have free will. I can let go if I've got my if I've got my eye on something that's like a desire, tasty. There is that aspect, and I want something to be tasty. I want something that I desire to have that tasty, but I also want it to be have many other qualities, But if it loses that taste, I can consider letting go. It's like, what am I trying to say? It's like, how do you know what to go for? How do you know what to manifest first? I think one of the first things we should start with is like letting go of all of this stress that we take on. It really doesn't suit us, to kind of have an enthusiasm, like, I don't know, like, it doesn't matter how much, it doesn't matter how much down you can be. You can still be happy, and it can be a bit abrasive because other people will say, "Oh, I'm in pain," and I'm thinking, you want to have my pain, But then if you learn enough about yourself and you learn enough about self-healing and pain, you realise that sharing your pain with others is sometimes it doesn't make their lives better or your own, because the attention's then all on your pain. And it's better off the pain, because the body's sometimes better off just left to its own devices if you're just getting confused. The second thing is laughter is a very good medicine, as long as it's the right type of laughter, Generally, stress and bad health come hand in hand. Getting stressed out, you can hear it in your ears and you can feel it in your veins. You can feel you burning because you're in stress, and that's because you've spent too long in the dark side of your mind. Or not in the dark side, even the light side, the side that we're just constantly visualising. We should close our eyes more and listen to the harmony, listen to people's voices, people's wonderful voices. There's some like bridges, like language. It's not a material thing, and yet it's not a imagination thing. It's like halfway between. Because obviously we every single one of us could develop a language, but then actually having to convey it to the others so that they can understand the language, that is a part of the language in itself. So it's one thing making a language, but making it transferable, conveyable. So we take on a language, it's a device, we don't know what we're doing with that device, but we use it in best faith. Legislation, words, books, media, all of that, it's all in between, it's all of this world in between, the gate, the door, the ladder, the portal. And I think of film, when you watch a movie film, it's made of fiction, it's made of words, it's made of meanings, it's expressing a meaning to the audience, to the viewer, to the onlooker. And that experience over 90 minutes says something. Say something more than any of those individual words could say, to go on a little journey, and then at the end of 90 minutes to feel different. So is our world run by logic and reality and by clever people, or is it more in our imaginations that everything takes place? Which would mean that we dwell half the time in heaven and half the time in hell, and half the time here in nature with each other, being distracted. And that's it, to distract each other. One of the best lessons I ever learnt in my life was to be able to turn off that inner dialogue, that worrying voice that's always, what if you don't do this, what if you don't do that? And from experience that actually that worry didn't do anything bad or good necessarily. It was just time used worrying. After the month or the year was over, the thing that you was worried about came just as if you had not even thought about it, not even known about it. But usually it wasn't that bad. And the worrying took up a hell of a lot of time. Now time is something we're given, and we can choose what we want to do with it. Sometimes it's good to try and not use it all the time, because it becomes like, an obsession of trying to make the best use of time. I think in a way it's just, it's like spending time together and enjoying things, and entertaining new ideas. I've got so many ideas that I've heard other people say, and we all come together on those ideas and make them actually happen. And I think there's going to be a time soon where the political arena and the national, the mood of the nations is just going to turn around to the point where people become individuals. People become individuals. People start to realise their individual value. And when we understand our individual value in society and in law, then the powers and it's there. I don't know how it is in other countries that are less privileged. I see our world, and sometimes I'm expecting to go into the cities and see a lot of chaos and we hear about stuff on the TV all the time, and corruption and everything's going crazy, but really people, the nature, everything seems kind of calm. The problem is more in our imaginations, in our heads, in our minds, in our hearts. A false view of the world. Why do I change myself for a society? Because I presume that society to presume me in a certain way. Why do I put shoes on? Because I think this society might look down on me for it, when I don't even think about another society. Why do I make my own prison? Regardless of if somebody tries to put a bar up in front of me, I don't need to put all of the bars up first, and I tend to do that. And like I've said before, I think it is good to absorb yourself in certain things as much as you can, in society, in life, in the whole scheme of things, so you can actually get a first-hand feel of what things are, if you want to, in moderation. Do you know what I mean? If, people drink alcohol, it's good to know what it's like to have the effects of alcohol. But to be honest, I don't get on too well with alcohol and stuff. But you'd be a hypocrite to talk about it without trying it, in a way. So, but I don't know. How much can you absorb yourself in a society and its evil ways before you decide that, you can't absorb yourself in that. You can't go along with the sins of society. You can't go along with the ignorance of following signs. Like I said on the previous video, to actually follow the signs, to follow the letter of the law is a sin. But it's a lesser sin, because it's a bigger sin to break those laws without divine reason, without the ultimate of good intent, without absolute common sense for all man. So we're posed with this thing. Do we use our ignorant bliss and follow the sign, do not enter, no authorised personnel only, and there's a door and we don't go in it because we obey the sign? Or do we realise that we are the authorised and we open that door? But it's obviously you have to know your own power and responsibility to open that door. This is where opening the door can't be, that's why it works this way. I think it's a very difficult and trying time. We've got a lot of machines, and we've made a great world and laid roads and put a lot of people out of work. which is good, really. We should replace man with robots, and we put our feet up and do more important things for man. To think, to contemplate, to improve the things that we've built, maybe, in our minds. But we've got a little bit amused by the entertainment things that we've built, by the medium. We're so amused by all of the films and games and books and everything. And we'll be entering the 3D internet realm soon, where you can walk around with 3D goggles on and a glove and touch things. It gets quite dangerous. And I must admit, after a long time spent on the internet, it is sometimes good to get your feet on the floor, to touch nature, and to know that it's real, that it is real. Because can we know? Will we know in the future if we're in a real world or a virtual reality world? Like I said at the beginning, we are the ones who give the spirit to the material world that we build. We are the one who put spirit into our property. And to a certain degree, we lose our own spirit by putting it into our clothes, into our cars, into our personal possessions and status and job titles and stuff. They're kind of material world things, I'm not saying a nice car is and nice clothes are the obvious evidence for somebody void of spirit. I'd say following a norm, pursuing happiness through society's ideals, that's where the problem lies. We need to be together in diversity. We need to look for each other's differences and say, thank God that you're different, man. Thank God that I don't like everything that you do. Thank God we're indifferent about that, Thank God that they were... Or thank whoever, whatever. It's a figure of speech, isn't it? But we get wound up a lot with figuratives. And it's been very difficult for me, because sometimes I try and say what I mean, but people think I'm saying what they want me to what they want to hear. I'm just saying what they want to hear. So then I say, on purpose, things that people don't want to hear, and we end up with a world full of things that we don't want to hear. So I've got a lot of those things out of the way, and I'll be saying things that people do want to hear. So don't mistake it for niceness, it's truth, Don't mistake it for me wanting to be popular with a popular idea. I think the best ideas, the truth is in everybody's hearts. So at the end of the day, when everybody strips away the bullshit and the lies and the insecurities and the fears and the jealousy and greed and gluttony and all of these negative traits to the individual character, not society as a large, you on your own. Each one of us as individuals, as soon as we can clear up our rotten character, then life just becomes so much easier for yourself. And even if it doesn't get that much easier because the people around you still won't get how easy it can be, even if it still remains an ongoing thing, stick with it, stick on the outside, give people your attention even though that they're boring, give people your attention even though that you know the answer. People sometimes just want an ear to listen to, remember, they want to be listened through rather than have to listen. It's not about knowing more and less, is it? It's about, I'm happy to listen to somebody, like, yeah, carry on, tell me what you think. And I'm not even judging whether it's right or wrong or stuff. I'm just listening to their account of things, because right at the end of what they've got to say, there might be a complete different sense of things. It's what they're saying with kids. If you listen to kids, they start with stupid things they say, but then if you give them a bit of attention, you realise it's actually more sense than most adults, if you look at what the question they're trying to ask. And so it's about the eye of the beholder. When you're looking at someone, oh yeah, he's an idiot, or she's horrible, or whatever, it's going to be your perception. You can call judgments on people if it helps you build a profile so you can stay away from people. But if we build such big profiles, oh yeah, all women are wicked. All right, okay, I'll just put a protection field around me that I don't want to be involved in women anymore, Oh yeah, Let's get rid of gingerhead people. Well, that's me out then, isn't it? You know. So really, it's not about like who I'm like ticking off my list or who I'm wary of anymore. I used to think that. I used to think, oh, I'll be wary of that type of person. I don't talk to that. They could be dangerous. Who's my person? I know there's my person out there that I love to talk to. I can spend all night, all day, all year, all lifetime talking to. I know most other people grate and grind at some point, but that's no reason to kind of eliminate people out of my existence just because they grate on me at times. I'm sure I'm grating on you a lot of the time. And what can we do? What's my duty to sit and talk to a tree or a camera? Or I hope it's you. I hope I'm making the right presumption. But then expectations. Get rid of expectations. Don't have expectations. You can have wishes and desires and all that lot, but if you think what you expected is going to make you happy or going to come true, it could make you really upset. And that's why people are upset all the time, because they're filled with expectations. Now you'll notice if you remove expectations, it's almost like the purpose kind of loses. Well, there's no energy in it anymore. If I've got no expectations, but just sit back and watch life a little bit. Observe yourself, observe the world, observe your place in it. And go, keep doing that. Observe yourself and the world and your place in it. Observe yourself and the world. When you observe the world, include the people. Now, So really, I'm about to finish this video off. I noticed the battery's probably going to cut out and just destroy the sense. Really, I have to get through each day. Today. It's always today, It's always today, isn't it? This is today. And I think there's certain little things that I've wound into the tapestry of my reality that help me through today to keep happy. And if I'm not happy, it's usually I let myself not be happy because it has a function. I can observe myself not being happy. But when it gets too far, I want to come back. I don't like, I'd rather twist the facts and be happy than to spend all day being miserable about stuff.